Welcome, this is Joe from Sec360, and today I'm going to talk to you about how to determine if your Windows computer needs to be rebooted before you apply any more patches or updates to it or install any additional software. Often, if you don't take this precaution, you will have collisions of updates from a previous time that are lingering around and have not completed with the new updates, and you might end up in that dreaded blue screen of death. Worst case, or you might see undoing update operations during your reboot cycle, and you'll reboot and your updates won't be applied. So we're going to start by looking at the things that will help you avoid that and have cleaner updates. So the first thing we're going to look at is the values in this registry key. This applies to Windows workstations and servers as well. It's the session manager registry key, and in there it has a particular value we want to look for. Now, do be aware this particular value does not exist if there are no updates or file rename operations that are pending. But when there are, we will definitely see this registry key value. And it's this one right here, this pending file rename operations. That's the registry key value we're looking for. As you can see, it has a number of values here. And we're going to talk about some comparisons about how many values are in this registry key compared to how long ago the system was updated and rebooted. Because the file rename operations only take place during reboots. And it is possible that a series of pending updates may cause you to need several reboots to clear the pending file rename operations. So this is where this registry key is located, pending file rename operations. Next, we're going to look at, well, how do we extract that to take a look at it? The registry in Windows is not the easiest thing to work with using the old reg executable tool. PowerShell is a little bit better, but it has certain challenges. So we use the get item to get that registry key, and then we could display the values. Now we're going to look at the properties that were returned from that registry key. And in this instance, let's go ahead and clear the screen. What we're going to see is, now we have a slightly different list. We don't have the session manager key over here, but we now have these properties or values in here. And you can see here is pending file rename operations. What we're doing is basically isolating the property out of the list that we want. And we're going to proceed on next to actually, how do we extract that out? So basically we enclose our command, the previous command, with parentheses, and then dot select the property value we want. And this is going to take a while because I've got a very interesting system here that's been updated less than a month ago. That's a lot of rename values. I typically don't see that many rename values after an update. So we got that. Well, we see there are a lot of blank lines in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our same command, and I'll go to the beginning so you can see it, and go back to the end, and just remove any blank lines or null values from it. Clear the screen again. And then we're going to run this command, and you can see we got rid of the blank lines. And this will give us a fairer idea of how many rename operations are pending. So obviously we need to do something with that. So let's assign it to a variable. Variables are a lot of fun. And then we can do other things. I could definitely keep going down the pipeline stream, but the command will get really long. I want to show you guys some other things because we need to use the values in other ways. Okay, so here we're just going to assign it to a variable. And it's done. Well, now we got in the variable. What can we do with the variable? Well, one of the things that we can do with the variable is we can look at how many values are actually in there. Complete it, and then .count to get the count property, and that is a lot of values in that variable, quite a bit. let's ensure that when we're getting the variable, yes, we did clear out the empty lines so they were not included in the variable. It's quite a bit of file rename operations. Normally you see tens, sometimes hundreds, that have that many values in the variable. It's a bit disconcerting, and you'll understand why. It means that the last updates that I applied, which was less than half a month ago, had a lot of file rename operations. So to that end, let's see when the last set of updates actually applied to the system. And the last value in the list will have the data was installed on, and then I will show you the current date. You can see it down here in the lower right corner of the screen. And it's only been about 11 days. But that last set of updates between the 18th and the 19th, the 17th and 18th, consisted of almost 3,500 file rename operations. That was a massive update for Windows. Okay, so we know how many updates there were. Now I'm going to show you a bunch of things, and this is how we break information down to extract what we want. Now, there are many ways that you can get the last boot time of a system. I'm going with the old system info executable, because it could be that some people listening may have to deal with PowerShell version 4 on older systems, particularly 2012 R2, that may not have the updates for PowerShell 5. So there may not be some of the nicer ways to get the system uptime. So I'm just going to run system info so you guys can see what you get back from system info. It'll be a nice long laundry list. But in this nice long laundry list, and I will point something out. The hotfixes here, the list of hotfixes on 2016 and newer tend to be shorter because Microsoft uses update rollup packs. Operating systems before that did not use update rollup packs until much later in their lifetimes. So 2012 R2, you may find systems that have hundreds, 300-400 updates before they started using update rollup packs. So this list could be extremely long on older operating systems. But we're basically looking for the system boot time. It's going to be right here. Well, this is all text output. How do we extract that? And it's got this funky comma in there, which makes it not really a date value, that not something that will work with get date and PowerShell. So I'm going to show you guys how to break something like this down as well. So this is kind of the bonus time. So here's the command that would just extract the system boot time using PowerShell where object, and we'll just get the line that says system boot time. And now we get to do a bit of magic, and I show you how you can get just the date time value. And that's using a little bit of PowerShell with the line. What we're going to do with the regular expression is we're going to say from the colon in system boot time line and any white space, one or more white space, what we're going to do is we're going to split our line on the colon and any trailing white space. And then we're going to select the last object that's generated. Okay, so you can see here that we have system boot time, the colon, a bunch of white space, and then the date values that we're interested in. So I'm going to show you what this looks like, breaking that down using a regular expression. And we have something that looks more like a date time that PowerShell get date can consume. But we've got this funky little comma here, and I'm going to show you guys how to basically get rid of that using a regular expression. So we're just going to iterate on, and here what we're going to do is we're going to use PowerShell to replace any commas that we find in the string with no value. Basically take it out of the string. So now when we look at this, we have a value that looks more like a PowerShell get date string. So I'm going to take this value and assign it to a variable, SBT for system boot time, and then I will show you what that variable looks like. And some of you may be wondering, why am I going through all of this? Well, this is a part of validation that you should be doing regularly when you're working with your systems. You shouldn't just be getting values. You should be actually collecting information, because you may need to report on the information. I'm going to do a future video on how to turn on transcription. And also, if you want to execute these commands remotely against another system using the invoke command, I'll show you guys how to enable TLS in your PowerShell connections so they're secure. And I'll also include in that how to select between TLS 1.3 and 1.2 so that you can fall back to 1.3, 1.2 if it's not available. So Server 2022 supports TLS 1.3. Older versions of Windows Server do not support TLS 1.3. So that's just a preview of some of the content I've got upcoming. So now we've got in our variable SBT for system boot time, the date and time of the last system boot. Now we want to know the days since the last boot. And so that's going to basically compose of a time span using the get date of our system boot time, and then just whatever the current time is in the system. And then I'm going to use some string formatting to actually take that information and output in a nicely formatted method. Now I'm telling the user or whoever's consuming, what the format of the output is going to look like. It's going to look like days, hours, minutes, seconds since the last boot. And using the format variable, I've got my replaceables here. So the entries after this string would be the variables which get replaced here in these replaceable format variables. And you can see it's days, hours, minutes, seconds. Milliseconds is also available, as well as ticks, but I didn't feel those were appropriate. So let's see what we get when we run this all the way down to here. So from here to here. So we go from what our system boot time was, and now we can see that it's been 11 days, 19 hours, 46 minutes, 59 seconds since the system booted. And that's fairly approximately from the current date time clock on the remote system itself. Okay, so we've got the system boot time, but here's the interesting thing. Well, how long has it been since the last hotfix was installed? And this gap tells you how long it took between when the last hotfix was installed and the system did that last boot, which should have occurred after the hotfix, not before the hotfix. If the system hasn't booted since the hotfix, you really need to get it rebooted. If you're using SCCM or just the Windows Update Service, you need to make sure that you're scheduling the system reboot. If it's a sensitive system, then humans have to be responsible for scheduling that. Remember, Microsoft expects its Windows operating systems to be rebooted every 30 days. And often, if you have to call Microsoft for support, one of the questions they'll ask you, when was the last time the system was rebooted? I have seen domain controllers that were up for 1,200 days. It was an amazing thing, but I had to tell the customer, if you try to reboot it now, it likely won't come back. It's been patching, and who knows how many pending file rename operations that may be in conflict. And with those older operating systems, they often were not designed to uninstall hotfixes if the process was unsuccessful. So this is all a part of validating what happened, did things happen correctly. This is called doing your due diligence. Okay, so we're working on doing our due diligence. So now we're going to go through, we're going to get the hotfixes, we're going to look at the last installed on date, and see what we have. So last system boot time was here on November 18th, 2023 at 3:08 a.m. And the last hotfix was installed sometime during that day. So what we have to hope is that even though we get our generic, it happened at midnight for the hotfix, hopefully that install time occurred before the system boot. So let's look at the comparison between the time the last hotfix was installed and the time the system booted. And we can see there's about quite a few hours. So the system booted 11 days ago, 19 hours and 46 minutes. And before that, the last hotfix was installed a little bit longer ago, a difference of about 3 hours. So that might correspond to midnight on or around November 18th. So it looks like the system was rebooted after the last set of hotfixes, but there's a discrepancy in time because we know that our hotfixes have a timestamp, but then when we look at our pending file rename operations, we see that we have a lot of file rename operations that should have been taken care of with the reboot. We know that from looking at the count of our file rename operations. So it looks like the system had a reboot to complete updates, and then it found more updates, and that's quite common with Windows. Often with the new servicing stack updates that Microsoft has, those have to go into place before later updates will be enabled during the monthly patch set. So we probably got a reboot from a series of updates, and when the system came back up, it likely found, oh, with this new servicing stack, I can now enable more updates to be downloaded and installed. So just because you patch and reboot doesn't mean you're done. You have to patch, reboot, and then validate that there are no more reboots that are necessary. So this tip that I'm giving you with the pending file rename operations should be a before, am I ready to patch, as well as an after, did I actually finish the full patch cycle, and will I be ready for the next month's patch cycle? So with that, I'm going to conclude the video, and thank you for your time. I really appreciate your attention, and I hope you find this helpful, and we'll come back for the future videos that I'm going to do, which will include things like if you're remoting with invoke command, how to enable the appropriate TLS level in your PowerShell script so that when it's reaching out remotely to other systems, you have a higher level of encryption.